Well, Hans, thank you so much for your time, and it's a pleasure to sit down and hear your story today. Um, it's sort of hard to work out where to start. Where are we going to start in a life of 88 years? I thought a great place to start would be in 1962, because that was the year that your life changed forever.
It certainly did.
Uh, can you take us to Tampa Springs, a small country town up in northern New South Wales? Take us to the Tampa Springs Hall in 1962. What happened that night that changed your life?
Let's put it in a proper context in that way. Florrie found out that John Turner and John Chapman would come and take a mission in Tampa Springs Anglican Church. And so they done it and prepared it for in the hall, in the Tampa Springs Hall. And so Florrie just came home and said, there's a mission there and we are going. Well, all right, we are going. And so we drove over there. We had Peter Cow and Anne with us in that way, and they played in the corner. And next moment Turner came to the stage and said, we are in a hall, but it doesn't matter where we speak about the Lord Jesus, but then we're here and it's a good place like any. And from there on he flowed over, he who has the light has life, and he who hasn't got the light hasn't got life. So my eyes went up to the ceiling. What has that light to do with life? There's only bulbs and electricity that goes through there. But I did not look beyond the ceiling. And so that is all what I can say about the sermon, what he preached that night. So we went home, and that whole night, when I had my pajamas on, sat on the side of the bed and looked at the bed light all night. What has that light to do with life? And I was as crabby the next day as you could, never mind. I was very crabby. And all day that light was in my head. And so that night time we came home, I had a shower. I told Florrie, I said, now I'm going over, I want to find out a bit more. It all confuses me. And then in that confusion, I went back to it was in the church, in an old Tampa Springs church, quite a few years old, needed a good piece of painting and everything. And so I walked in, sat down in the middle of the congregation, and what is the sermon was, he explained about Christianity, but it just went over my head in that way. But on the end of it, he said, I got a book here about Christianity, if you want it, ask me. So I stepped out of the pool right in front of him and said, John, I want this book. Now, he said, Hans, you and I, we have to go in there and pray. Anyway, so he said, now we got to pray. And so we sat in the pew and we talked a bit about what my feelings was. He said, my feelings, to be quite honest, are very confused. In one sense, I'm lost. I heard this and that is completely strange. The whole thing is strange. Where does it come from? And then John said, now, then we will ask the Lord that he takes the strangeness away and brings that light into it, because we talked about the light. He said that he brings that light into you. Now John prayed over there, and in the prayer what was there, and he said, Hans is here, all things is dark within himself, that you lighten the lights up and free his heart and make the heart that there is sunshine in his heart. And so we bring Hans before you. And I just said, Lord, if that is true, when I open my eyes, let this church be new. And when I opened my eyes, that old church was new, and so was I. And just in that way, we talked a little bit more, and then I went home. I wanted to go home. And to this day, I never told Florrie that I have made a decision that night to be a Christian. I didn't have to. It was, she could see it. And so there was joy, a different joy, a different things was there. There was a foundation there. There was, purpose there. There was, the whole thing's changed. I got the vision that he brought the heart, the stone heart, into a flesh heart and put a light into it. And there's a life into it. That light became life, and it became a purpose. It became an aim, and it became something where you had life. And then, one evening I was there, the fishes came back to me.
Fishes. I mean, Hans, we
How the fishes.
haven't talked about fishes yet, but I know there's lots of stories about fishes to come.
So the brook came back that I asked for freedom.
What brook are you talking about? What river are you talking about, Hans?
It's only in Germany you have little brooks going through paddocks in that way. And to this brook, and then suddenly I stopped and looked in there, and I sat down and focused on the fish. There was little fish, only about that big. And they were swimming around there, and then sort of, what I can remember so clearly about it, if I only could be as free as those fish. If I only could be free. And that sort of gave me, when we sort of, I was happy when I was at home with my family, in that way, I was happy that way. But when I went to the Hitler Boys, to the meetings, I was uncomfortable. And so I had to tolerate that uncomfortableness for all the time until 45.
So tell us a bit about your family first, and then tell us a bit about that Hitler Youth experience, because a lot of people today might not know, they might have heard of the name Hitler. Hitler Youth, what was going on in Germany in the 1930s? Firstly, for your family, tell us a bit about the family you were born into.
My family sort of is, my father was a tanner, and I was grown up above, was a flat above the tanning factory, and I was born there. But my sister was first out. From there we went to Greenwich, and then I had a bondage with my father's brother, the butcher. He was a butcher, and I had a much better relationship with my uncle than with my father. And so then we came back to Neumünster, and then we went to school, and then I had to join the Hitler Boys. So that is just brief in that way. In the Hitler Boys we were taught mostly, it would be wise if I read Mein Kampf, My Fight. And that was more or less for us the gospel, to follow Mein Kampf and to have the fight what he has, Mein Kampf, in that direction. And it didn't hit the core. Why do I have to fight? Why do I have to, why do I have to? And here, sort of, my grandmother and great-grandmother, my great-grandmother was still alive, a beautiful lady, and she sort of, the loving kindness what was in hers, and then the fight there, sort of, there was a completely sort of, for a young boy to grow up in there, it's a complete confusion in that way, and that's what I had. My mother, a few times she came over, put her arms around me, she said, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah. You wrote in your memoirs of this time when you were 10 years old, "I remember being told that non-German people should not be trusted under any circumstances. We were at war to clean the world of the people who were not as perfect as we were. We felt we were special, we were superior in stature, education, and were a pure race." What does that do to a 10-year-old child?
But I do to a 10-year-old child, but I was just now, sort of, you live in peace at home. Then you got to go to school, you get indoctrination, and you got to shout Heil Hitler, and this, that, way. And then you do the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, and the rest of it is indoctrinate. Mein Kampf in that way. So it sort of, in my mind at that way, it didn't bring sort of a foundation where you grow by and you go up in education. But as I said, it was all over the place. And that is a confusion in it. And then sort of you get older and this and that way. And then we were told that we are perfect right, but I'm only a human being, you know. And it always, every year grew more. It's like, I'm only, how can I be perfect? I should, you know, sort of, how can I be perfect if I'm only just a human being? But then you were slogged with the indoctrination, you're a perfect right, and you got to be that by, and the rest of it. How can that fella next door? How can he be different than me? Both of us we play in the same team, and over in other countries, you know, it's the same thing. Sort of what I knew that other countries, other boys, they do the same.
Now, your family had some pretty serious encounters with the Nazis during the war. Can you tell us a little bit about those and what impact that had upon you?
We got to go to between 1942-43, and it was sort of more towards, you know, so middle to the year of 42, when my auntie, my mother's sister, was hanging up the washing, and she said, what Hitler does, I just can't comprehend, and I don't know really where he is going in that way. The neighbor heard it and went to the Gestapo and told them that, you know, said derogatory way about Hitler and that way. And then in the afternoon, Gestapo came, took her, you know, took her straight into jail, you know. I was in the Hitler Boys. My name was there, my mother's name was there, and he's in Hitler Boy. So the Gestapo pulled me in for interrogation, talk about or discuss about your family, you know, what is that by? Now, my uncle, he was right in front of the war. They never told him that they had his wife in to you know, because she said, but Hitler, that is no good. And he was completely in the dark without anything. I had a whole week of interrogation regarding family. You know, my father was in Kiel, and then my uncle was there in that way. And then there was another uncle there. Another uncle was there. He says he was rather a tall man, 6'2", 6'3" he was. And he said, I will join the army, but I won't join the SS, because SS 6'2", you got no choice. And so what happened then? So they said to him, sign here. And he said, I will not sign the SS. I will go in the army, but I will not go in the SS. So they marched him out. There's a brick wall there, bang, he was dead. We don't know where he is, don't know. But we only know that they marched him out and shot him right there and then.
Wow. These sort of experiences, that's what's leading you to the creek. That's what's taking you there.
Every time I went out of it, I marched straight to the fish. And there with the creek, with the fish, and seeing them so free around there, that gave me the strength. Today I can say, that's when God put peace in me so that I could cope with it and could get through it. Because unbeknown, even if you're not a Christian that way, if you're a chosen vessel, God will bring you through those things until you know exactly what God's will is for you. Because when you go to Jeremiah 29, verse 11, I know the plans I have for you, but not to hurt you, but to guide you. Now, there is a text which is loaded. You know, if I look there again to the fishes and the interrogation I had to go through, I know. And today I can say hallelujah.
So you got sent to the rifle school for the violent Nazi youth boys. Was not a fun experience. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You see, we had, I could shoot straight when I was 10 years old. I could hold a rifle straight on a 22 target. My shooting was between 10, 11 and 12 all the time. And so when my record was written, he could shoot and he could hold a rifle, so he was good material for sharpshooter. And that's how I trained me. And to be quite frank, I could take, on 100 meter, I would take your whiskers off. I could. But one thing where I'm really glad about it, I never, ever pointed a rifle on any human being. I shot other things, but I've never pointed on a human being. And so in 44, October, November, we were told that we should go to, our school should go to Rügen, the island in the Baltic Sea. When you take Denmark, Germany, Russia up there, that's Rügen is an island over there. Should go over there. And there were 35 of us. And okay, then it was coming close enough to November. And we packed all the stuff. Now I had my pack up. I had 20 bullets in a pack. I got 10 bullets in a bridge. There's a full things of 10 bullets in, and I had a bridge of 10 bullets in my pocket. And so we were on the railway. I had my pack there, I had the rifle against the wall, and we were standing there. Next moment, somebody grabbed me by the collar, and then and the train came in. Next the train came, they came and shuffled me on the train, and then put me in a toilet. And there were 2 boys already there, and another two came. There were 5 of us. And then I didn't know who was, because my mother was behind me. And then I found out that none of those boys, 30 boys, returned. It was only our 5 who were alive out of that mob.
So your mother saves you from the jaws of death and rescues you. Tell us a bit about your mum. She plays such a big part in your early life. Can you tell us a bit about her?
My mum is was very well educated not by her mother, but by her grandmother, my great-grandmother. And she educated my mum very, she was well educated. And she made sure that there were 4 of us, there's Martha, myself, Anna Marie and Willie, that we got the best education what is there. But from my father's side, it's a different family with a different philosophy. When a boy turns 12, 13, he's out and going to go to work and go to bring home money. And my mother there was the differences in the two my parents. And she says, our sons will have an education. And he didn't quite, but she stuck to her gun that I have an education. And that's I'm very grateful for. She fought that I am in a position where I'm retired now. In a position where I was, you know. And yes, my mother was very strong-headed.
Your father. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with your father during your childhood.
Between my father and me, to many words you and I have spoken just today, I haven't spoken with him in my lifetime. Never have sat down and had a conversation with him, where I had plenty with my mama, but none with my father. Last time I seen my father I was in 1948. And so on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I left sharp at 5 o'clock so I could be 5:30 at tech and do sort of schooling in that way. So this one was on a Thursday night at 5 o'clock when I worked from the work firm. I had to go this way, that way, then to tech. And then over here is a lake. Now when I came down here, my father came this way, walked clean past me. And so I just walked across the road and looked at the lake and said, wow. So, and there was one thing I said, okay, if that is the way it is, sort of now, I was older now, going on 17. If that's the way it is, then I show you what I can achieve without you. So it was a challenge for me. And what would I do if I faced him today? I don't know.
So it's 1945 now, May 1945, and the war in Europe is over. And you wake up one day and find that the Nazis are gone. What is it like waking up to find that your whole world has changed?
In Neumünster, there is what we call a Großflecken. It's a Großflecken. And I was on the bottom part near the police station. You see, I came back, and so I don't know where I was going to, but I was there. And then next moment they all shouting, the war is finished, the war is finished. There was no more war there. And I just stood there lost. Completely lost. I didn't know sort of, the war was finished. Now, I still was afraid because the truth is, I'm an absconder from that camp.
You ran away from the camp.
I'm absconded. And truth was, I still was looking over my back, walking forward and looking backwards and see if anybody is following me in that way. And so I stood there, and if I go over today, I will show you exactly where I stood and looked around. What now? I just stood there and then, what now? It's completely lost. So I asked, what now?
A few years later, you find yourself as a social worker working amongst disadvantaged youth, people from broken families who are making trouble for themselves. You're working with the police and with the courts. How did your own experience as a child growing up in a broken family and a broken culture equip you and help you work with those youth?
We did psychology at uni in that way. And in the whole things at uni, we had to go to a hospital. And in the hospital, we had to go and see, one thing I wanted to make me a social worker, a hospital social worker. And I said, no. And I got tangled up with a little boy. And there was domestic violence. And it was exactly the same situation that I grew up in. Now, the first things they said, I just sat beside the boy, and he looked at me, and I looked at him with no spoken words. And when I went back to college at night time, he said, I looked at him, why didn't I speak? I would have done harm. That's the conclusion I came to. I would have done harm. And the silence, and then so came over, and I had a lengthy talk with the lecturer in that way. And then he agreed with me that your silence gave the boy more confidence that he can look at you, that he can sit beside you. He doesn't have to be afraid. And that was the core of the whole matter. I was afraid of my father. But he's gone, and he's out of my life. I don't have to worry about that fear anymore. And that fear is gone, and now I have to replace it with something. And that boy was there, sort of, well, I'm fighting with, I got to replace my fear, and sat beside him and think, I said, oh, well, I got to do something good here, and that good made a good in me. And that boy didn't talk. I couldn't make him to talk. And one day I came through the hospital, and there's a pond there and a beautiful fish in there. And I said, oh, good, that's good. There's a fish. That is good. Anyway, what happened then was I went up, and then the boy, and we said hello, and then this one, I talked, and he just looked and looked, but he came closer and closer and closer and closer. His trust was going very good. And I said, look, let's go down to the pond and have a look at the fish, and then we can take little pebbles and throw the pebbles in the fish and see if we can make them wriggle, So, and then he said that, and we stepped away from here to there, and he said, wir müssen das Auto mitnehmen. We have to take the car with us. And there was a hallelujah there. He spoke. He spoke. And then so him and I, we just didn't stop talking. We just talked. Talked to the fish. We went to the fish and we told the fish a story. We went around there. Now we will not take the stones throwing in. We upset them and this and that way. And there came the growth, peace, acceptance, helping, and building something firm and something positive in that way. And that's how it all came out. Taught me so much. You have to be an example. You have to show there's something different. I didn't know what the different was. The different came out after 62. There came the difference out, the foundation of solidness in Christ, in that way. But there was the whole strength in there, in that way.
So, from post-war Germany to country New South Wales, when you got here, what did you find?
Things that I found when I came to my sister's place. It was 1:30 in the morning. I arrived there. 6 o'clock I went up and I went to the veranda. I can show you, there's a photo there. I went on the veranda and I looked out, and there's a big ring around mountains, sort of a bit bigger anthills that were around there. And then sort of as early in the morning, you will see the galahs, you see the cockatoos, and you see the magpies and that way. And it was a bit of a midnight, and the magpies went on top of the steel roof, bang, and they got it. And then the quacking galahs and the cockatoos, and they came in that way. And I just thought, this is a different world. It's a beautiful world, sort of in that way. And there I said, that it is. I will never, ever go back. My mind was made up. There was a foundation there where I enjoyed. And I enjoyed Timber Springs for 11 years.
So you'd grown up in a society that taught you, indoctrinated you, not to trust anyone, in fact to even report on your own parents. And now you find yourself in a community in country New South Wales where trust and mateship are foundations of the community life. As you look at the people around you, what did they have that you were missing, and what did you want that they had?
Now, when I came to Timber Springs and Eugen took me around, and then especially Colin, who was there, and he took me around everywhere where we went to. Everywhere where he went, I went. And wherever I went, and when I looked at the guys, at the drovers, at the farmers, at the cockies, at the station hands, on every Tom, Dick and Harry, even the town dog, when I looked at it, they were different. They were different. And then Max Hein, his name is, he was a farmer. He was about 60, between 60 and 70 years old. And he said a cockish hitch. It's a piece of wire, it's a cockish hitch, that you tie things together. Hans, do you know how to do a cockish hitch? You haven't got a clue. What is it? He said, come on, I'll show you. And when I watched him, the way he taught me that cockish hitch, the personality, the characteristics, the whole structure of the human being, I said, well, that's what I want. And from there on, I really copied every inch, every second, every word, every action I copied. And so that it was perfect in me, exactly like them.
Around this time, as you were forming a new identity in country Australia, you met Florence and you got married and you welcomed your son Peter into the world. You write in your memoirs at Peter's birth, when I looked at Peter, I was happy, lost, and frightened. That night when I came home, I sat on the bed and my youth, my childhood was right in front of me. As I was looking for something that I could use to create a relationship, but whatever I could see was nothing of any help other than hurt. I guess deep down my real fear was, will I act like my dad? And that frightened me. As an abused child who becomes a father, what had to happen inside of you to face up to that reality, that brokenness, and also to overcome and push through that challenge?
Well, the word side it itself, what I mean is that I was, because what I seen in the farm there, in Timber Springs, the men, how they were different. It has gone so far, but there was something missing. And that is responsibility to what you become responsible of. There's something missing. And that was missing because I sort of dwarfed it in my childhood, because there was nothing what I could use anymore. Absolutely nothing. And so that experience I never had. What those farmers had, what those cockies had, so there's something missing. And so the fear, what will I be? But then sort of my character from here on was a responsibility, hey, I got to change. And then sort of you got to change in that way. So with Colin and with his father, George, I could speak. And so indirectly I spoke with him. Relationship with father and son. And I spoke with George Hines, with Hines. Relationship between father and son. And he said straight out to me, he said, that is missing. He said, yeah. And I was honest, yes. And so he wanted to know what happened. And so he knew that I didn't have the right relationship in that way. But he also was familiar with the war and what happened there in that way. And so him and I, we had a very honest talk. And he took the fear away and put something new in. But I wasn't backwards in saying I was afraid. I was afraid.
So Hans, we're coming up to the middle of the story again. We're coming back to 1962. At this time in the story, God's given you so many good things. You're in a brand new home country. You've found wonderful people, a wonderful place. You've found a wonderful wife, starting a new family. But you also, right at this time, there was this deep fear or this black hole I could not get rid of. What was missing in your life?
Not sort of missing in my life, sort of Psalm 40, sort of how far should I go back? When I read the Psalm first, patiently I waited. So I got to look back from the past, to the patience I had and the confusing I had. And then when it says the second row, he turned. Who turned? And then sort of he lifted. He lifted me out of the pit. So we're talking about God at this moment. Where God heard me, he lifted, turned around, he came. He lifted me out of the deep pit, out of the life I was living in, which was more or less a pit. And then he placed my feet on a solid foundation. And now, today, what I can say, Satan will not let you go. He brings that past constantly to you, the past. So there was not missing. It was a big black hole, was him not wanted you to get forward in God's life, in God's spiritual life. So, but with the way I wrote it in that way is still black hole, because I got to write it the way it was. There was a black hole there. Why is it there? Why can't I shake it? Why can't it this? And so eventually, when I drove on a tractor, I had it out with God. And that was exactly the same what Paul says. There is a thorn in my life. 3 times have I said, and God just turned around and peacefully and said, my grace is sufficient for you. And in that way, I had to turn to God and say, God, get it off my back and let me go on with your work. And that's what happened. And so that black hole has disappeared. Yes, I can bring it back again, but no, it's not there anymore, because God's grace has taken over and has fulfilled the things which were empty. And now my life is full with God's love, with God's care, with God's teaching, and in one word what it says, my grace. And that has grown to such an extent that nothing will has any dominion anymore. So it was just because I didn't know. And maybe, let's be truthful about it, I haven't put all my trust in God. There was something there where Satan could fiddle around with, but he can't fiddle anymore. God is a winner, and there's victory. There's really victory there when you let God rule your life. And so the black hole is gone.
So we're on the other side now, in the time of your life of light and life. As you look back on that time, this half of your life, how did Jesus set you free from the dark prison with no freedom from your youth and childhood? How did he set you free from that? What did he give you?
Well, when I look at it in this way now, from that I have full sort of understanding of Jesus, what he's done for me, and I'll go back to the first time when I looked at the fish and I asked, if I only could be as free as those fish, and then go through the way and understand I'm going back now with the full knowledge of a Christian faith. When I go back, and then when Jesus has helped me in lots of ways when there was something there that he sort of be still, like Moses was on the Red Sea, be still, and then sort of just don't think of anything, don't do anything, but just let it go. And then next moment he had a new way for me, and constantly when I was on a wrong way, he stopped me and gave me something different to think about. It's mostly thinking about it, and I couldn't understand it in that time, not at all, but I was wondering why. But it's good and it's beautiful and I get credit for it, but why? Where did it come from? I had no idea of it. And so Jesus sort of led me in his secret way until that night at church, and I said, when I open my eyes, let there be new, let it be new. It was new, and everything from that moment on became new, and it became a foundation. I was standing on a new foundation, which was a foundation which was unshakable. It was true there, and so the tractor driving that came into it was the best lesson, because I had arguments with the Lord and I always came off second best. Never won an argument, you know. But there the teaching came and went broader, deeper, and deeper. And then so the black hole, when the black hole did eventually came up again and I was conscious of it, the simple words I got, my grace is sufficient for you. And I can put other verses to it now. When Joshua was extremely worried and to take over the Israelite tribe, and they take over, and God says to Joshua, have I not commanded you, never be discouraged, never be distracted, for lo, I will be with you. There I found what it means, lo, I will be with you. And that was much better than the rest of it put all together. Lo, and there is the circle now where the freedom came in, but was so, what is it, 42, 18 years. It took 18 years, and God worked with me, 18 years patient. What a beautiful thing.
So from that creek, 18 years, finally to find the freedom that the fish had.
Yeah.
One of my favourite parts of your memoir is when you wrote, I would not have to go to a creek anymore. I could bring my burden to Jesus anytime, no matter where I was. It became a relationship which was real.
Which is real. You know, sort of at this moment I can just look up the sky and say, yeah, he's there behind the clouds and can bring my burden to him. And that is it in the fullness of that, you know. So yes, there's 100 different other things that comes in between, which are completely irrelevant. There I have, and here's a fulfillment. Okay, there's a gap, 18 years. But today, sort of life is worth all the trouble. But you've got to take with it that he also teaches you what he wants you to teach and to help other people. I could have never, unless I had the experience with that boy, when I had experience with a juvenile, when I had experience with the delinquents, when I had to stand up with them, and then all that experience was stored up, and in 62, when the call came, there was a bucket full of knowledge, and now it became reality and became Father, and which came sort of teaching material what I had in my stores in that way. And that is the greatest things of it all. And I did not know that Christ was teaching me all that time.
So you've got a real clear feeling that Jesus was preparing you for the main work and ministry of your life.
Yeah.
Let's go to that now. We're past 1962 now, and you find yourself as the superintendent of a children's orphanage in the Armidale region, a father to dozens of children from the most broken and traumatic childhoods. What was the key to building safe, healthy relationships with them?
In Timber Springs, I had sort of after that benediction, I had a youth group in Timber Springs, 200 people. I had 22 boys, and I reckon it's the highest percentage I ever can say, that I had so many boys out of so few people. And there again is, they had a normal home, they had a natural home, they had a beautiful home. And now I was teaching them spiritual things about Jesus and what he went through, these Jews, and all the punishment and all that went through. And there's a lot of question came out. Jesus was God's son. Why didn't God protected him? Why did he have to punish? Why there was a punishment there? Why has he done it? Why did I hurt him? Why don't I respect him? And those are questions I had to deal with there with those Jews who had a beautiful home. And that, again, sort of, if I look back, was Jesus' way of teaching me the principle of when somebody really comes out of a difficult home, that you've got to have patience, and a child sees more than they listen to. And so my examples have to be such that children can see that is worthwhile living, and then your words top it off with that way.
So you've got lots of kids coming through the home, through the orphanage, and you're constantly having to start from scratch, a new relationship, a new connection. What was your way of building trust with a child when they first came into the home?
And mostly what I done to them, I took them aside and stood sort of very close and said, now, I'll give you 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks, I want you to ask yourselves the question, can I trust that man? And then you and I, we will talk. And it's that you got to be very critical. You got to look, am I trustworthy? And that is your job now. And so I turned it around that they have to judge in their mind, am I trustworthy, what I do? And that's sort of, that changed the whole story. Then I got to live so that I can see I'm safe. I'm safe. Yes, I have tread on many corns, but not the children's.
What connection did you make with the dozens of children coming through that home and growing up and going on to adulthood? Have you kept in touch with them?
There's one child there, her name is Vanessa. Her name is Vanessa. And they came from a family where the mother died on a brain tumour and the father drank himself to death. And she came over and she was very close with Anne, our daughter. And the two were partners in crime. Where one was, the other one was, in that way. And then when we sort of just about in the 70s, early 70s, she came, she stood right in front of me, came very close. You gonna be my father from this moment on. And her children today call me granddad. And she always introduced me, that's my dad. That's my mum. So what greater honour can you get? A child who comes out of misery and say, and these are the privileges now, where they have found such a trust. And now when I said in the beginning, you take 2 weeks, can I trust that man? You put yourselves on the line, can they trust me? Is my life trustworthy? And since Christ came into my life, I will challenge anybody. See if you can trust me. That's your job.
So things have come full circle in this story, Hans. To start off as a child who trusted nobody, who had all their trust broken, journeying through decades and decades and decades, meeting the Lord Jesus, the light and the life, and then you find yourself bringing trust to children who were in a similar position to you. Last Saturday, you turned 88 years old, and as you look back on that story, what do you think is the meaning of your story? What did the author of your story want the world to know about him?
That they can trust him. Jesus, he took over the life. So in other words, Jesus, through me, put his life in order. Can I trust him? And because what he done with me, Jesus came out tops.
Hans, when you were young, you were surrounded by death. One of the most horrible stories I read from your memoir was being told by the local authorities to go through the houses where the bombs had fallen and pick up all the body parts and all the people's possessions and try and sort through them. And I can't even imagine the horror of facing death like that. And that had a huge impact on you. You escaped death many times. You escaped death many times as a child throughout your young life. As you now face death and you face serious cancer in your body, what's different now? How has your perception of death been changed so radically from when you were young?
There is a promise. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And God kept his words, well, I would say from the fish pond. God has kept his words, I will never leave you or forsake you from, I would like to be free. And I can say I felt it all along through, he brought me through. So he brought me through for a purpose. And I will not fail that purpose, what he has done. Now, when I look to the cross, Jesus went very willingly to the cross and said, it is finished. And he gave up the ghost. But only from being on the earth. It's finished. It's finished for my time. It's finished here. And so it's the same with me. One day, my time will be finished. And I said before, last time when I said, what a day it will be. And the Lord comes down to me, takes me by the hand, and leads me to the promised land. And I'm looking forward for that. So what is there to fear? Honestly, what is there to fear? And so I have made it very clear, I'm not afraid. But the cancer will not win either. Because that is not my personality to sit down and wait. I will walk straight through it. I'm still here, and I'm still talking, and I still got great faith in that way. And like Paul says, I'd rather go yesterday, be a much better life for me, so it would. But what has God still in store for me? Even if I'm 88 years old, why is my brain still so vivid and so clear that I'm still thinking and can change and can plan anything? The clarity is there. So why is that still there? So God has a purpose there. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Today is today. I live today. And I will bring it out today in such a way that I will at least have an opportunity to talk to one, two, the more the better, about the love of Christ, what he has done for me. From the fishes till today, He has never ever forsaken me.
Mm.
And He has brought a lot of the way He has used my life. A lot of people have found better lives and have found perfect lives.
Mm.
Children especially, but later on in life, alcoholics and drug addicts and all of them were I dealt with, you know, and saved them in that way. And that is what He done through me, not I done for Him. No, He done through me. And to be in His instrument, and that was the most glorious thing, to be an instrument for Him, because He was an instrument for me on the cross.
Hans, let's finish where we started. Back in 1962, sitting in that old church, and you're praying, if this is all true, then when I open my eyes, let everything be new. And it was. Sometime soon, maybe next month, maybe next year, you're going to close your eyes again in death. And when you open your eyes, everything will be new. My final question is, when you open your eyes on the other side of death and you meet the Lord Jesus, who gave His life for you and brought that light and life and showed you that He was with you the whole time, the question is, what are you going to say to Him?
I don't know. Most likely, thank you. And I think that would be the most, in my head, would be the most appropriate word. Thank you. I, for laying down His life. B, for having the patience of 18 years to make it so beautiful. C, to give me something to be extremely proud of, and that's my family. And D, that He was and is and ever will be my God, my Saviour. Thank you.
We thank God for you, Hans, and we thank Lord Jesus for you. God bless you, and we're going to meet again. Thanks, brother.
That won't be the last one.